So this presentation is going to cover the patent pooling, the Open Innovation Engine, and the very, very beloved patent trolls, which you may have heard about at some point in your life. So before I start these presentations, I always like to sort of cover some basics of patent law. And a lot of people, they don't realize that intellectual property includes many components. It includes trade secrets, copyrights, trademarks, patents, and licensing. And each one is like a tool in your arsenal. For example, copyrights protect copying. And if somebody develops it independently, then it's not covered by the copyright. And I've got something going off all the time. Hold on one second. This will probably be edited out. I'm going to mute the desktop audio. Okay. So you guys can still see the presentation, I hope. Yeah, so anyways, it's like an umbrella, and these are tools in your arsenal. So you use each one depending on the need. So copyrights stop copying. So if somebody makes an exact copy of your program, that's where a copyright comes in, hence the name copyright. However, patents cover functionality, and that means that if you can claim something in a functional way, even if somebody comes up with it separately, then it's still protected by a patent. And the interesting thing in the open source community is they've latched onto copyrights with respect to different types of licenses. However, as soon as you say patents, you're the devil. So the interesting thing is that copyrights and patents are part of intellectual property. They can be licensed, they can be given away. So the same rights that you can attach with copyrights, you can also attach with patents. So that's just sort of a basic primer. Trade secrets, the best example is the Coca-Cola formula. You keep, if you can keep something secret, that's the best protection because a secret lasts as long as you can keep it secret. This other slide I like to cover on every presentation to make sure that, especially in hacker labs, I shouldn't say hackathon labs, open innovation communities, open source communities, open whatever communities, they typically don't really have an IP plan. And what I always say is I don't care what your IP plan is as long as you have one. And this is the gold standard for IP plans. An idea comes in, somebody reviews it, whether it's just the person that came up with the idea or perhaps a review committee made up of engineers and business people, like for example at some of the bigger corporations. And out of that review committee comes three decisions. You either patent, you publish, or you keep secret. You patent when you want to protect the functionality so that other people can't steal it. As I said, a copyright is limited. A patent covers functionality, so it's much broader coverage. When do you publish? Well, you publish when you want to create prior art. In other words, when you want to give things away to the world and prevent other people from patenting that, you can do a copyright. A copyright is basically a publication. In the United States, and pretty much in all countries, as soon as you publish something, it's copywritten. However, in many countries, you have to register the copyright before you can sue people for copyright infringement. And of course, you're aware of the copyright licenses, the various open source copyright licenses that exist that could also be applied to patents, by the way, which is part of what we're doing with the OU812 Open Innovation Engine. We're applying the same sort of licenses in the open world for copyrights into the patents. Finally, trade secrets. Coca-Cola formula, it's still undiscovered. Pepsi doesn't taste like Coke. An example of another type of, in another technology areas, for example, computer-related technologies, a cryptographic algorithm hidden behind several layers of computers at a banking system. Very, very difficult to reverse engineer. And in that situation, you probably want to keep it secret. And the reason is when you patent something or when you publish something, you're making it available to the public. In other words, you're telling people what you're doing. So trade secrets are a way of protecting your technology basically by not telling people what you're doing. But the caveat is that if it can be reverse engineered, it's fair. In other words, if I can figure out how you're doing something on a server or whatever, I can bypass your trade secret protection. And right now, my understanding is Coca-Cola has the formula locked in a vault where like 3 admin people or, high level people can have access to the formula. Now, my lectures are always open with respect to questions. If anybody has a question at any time during the lecture, you're welcome to ask it. I won't guarantee it I will answer it, but I will definitely listen to it. So now, when the OU812 Open Innovation Engine was created, it resulted actually from a change in the patent laws. In 2013, the America Invents Act came into play, and basically we harmonized with Europe, and that was not a good thing. I was traveling to Finland back in 2010, and all the startups I would talk to, I'd say, hey, why aren't you filing patents? And they'd say, well, they can attack you before, during, and after, and they're too expensive, we can't afford it. And very naively, I was like, yeah, but in America, we get our patent portfolios and we monetize them, and all of a sudden, these startups become Googles. Well, in 2013, we harmonized with Europe, and now in the United States, you can get attacked before, during, and after. And also in the United States, we're first to file. We used to be first to invent, okay, and that's a key difference. First to invent means if you're a little guy in a garage coming up with an idea and you're working diligently on it, even though Megacorp files a patent before you do, and you file a patent after Megacorp, as long as you can show that you were working diligently towards a reduction to practice, either the patent application or an actual working device, you can overcome the application that was filed before your application. Well, in Europe and the rest of the world, they have the concept of first to file. And that means whoever can run to the patent office first wins. And the question I have for you is, who gets to the patent office faster? Is it a mega corporation with 1,000 attorneys in-house and 1,000 attorneys out-house? Or is it a little guy in a garage working on the next jet? And that's the problem. So when we went to first to file, it was a huge advantage for the corporations. And the fact that they can attack you before, during, and after is another huge advantage to the corporations, and hence why I was an idiot when I was talking to the kids in Finland and trying to explain to them what I was doing. And when I saw the laws getting changed, all of a sudden I was like, okay, now I understand what the kids were saying. And that's when I decided to solve the problem. And, this is part of the solution. I'm telling you how I came about the solution. And the problem was, how do you compete with corporations when they have unlimited power and money and you're in a garage? That's the problem. So this patent pooling came out of the concept of a bunch of little companies were basically suing each other over patents. And I worked on the digital rights management patent pool. It was one of the most successful patent pools. And there was like 200 companies writing patents on digital rights management, making software, making services, and suing each other. And somebody came up with a brilliant idea of saying, look, all our money is going to the patent attorneys. Why don't we form an association and put all of our patents in a pool and license the entire pool to the corporations? And they did. And in order to get into the pool, your patent had to read on the spec, the digital rights management spec, which is basically blockchain before blockchain. And as long as that your patent read on the spec, the claims read on the spec, it got admitted into the pool. And once you were in the pool, you became one of the licensee. It became part of a license to these mega corporations. And this pool of about, I think it had several thousand patents in it, was licensed to every single corporation that you can imagine. Name one. Sony, Microsoft, Google, anybody that's delivering content licensed this portfolio because it was cheaper for them to license the portfolio than to develop it themselves or to fight it in court. So it's a win-win. The licensees win because they get money for their patents, and the corporations win because they get to license this portfolio for much less than they could develop it themselves. So in this patent pool, $1 from every device ever made goes back into the pool. So every single licensee that bought into the pool, every device they ever made, $1 of it had to go back into the pool. And then that money that was collected in the pool was distributed based on how many patents you had in the pool. So if you had 100 patents and somebody else had 50 patents, it's a 2-to-1 distribution. And that worked out very, very well. In fact, I believe it's the most successful patent pool perhaps in history. So I knew about patent pools, and I knew about the problem in Finland and now the United States, the fact that first to file, you can get attacked before, during, and after you file your patent, and it costs a lot of money to attack, which means only the megacorps are going to be doing the attacking. Another side note on this is interesting. I was traveling to Finland, and they have this conference called Slush, and I'm there, and there's 12 little startups doing health-related apps, and you've got Microsoft Health, you got Sony Health, you've got all the major corporations there, looking for technology. And I go up to each table, and I'm like, did you file a patent? And they're like, no, we get attacked before, during, and after, same old story. So here they were sitting at these tables like this, hiding their stuff, which gave the corporations all the negotiating power, because now they're negotiating with one company and they have all the power. Had those 12 companies actually formed a pool like I'm talking about here, now the negotiating power would have switched over, and now they would have actually been able to, to negotiate properly with these corporations. But instead, the corporations have all the power, so as long as people don't collaborate, they don't have the power. And an example is Google, San Francisco was putting out bids for wireless, companies to come in and do wireless networks in the city of San Francisco. And Google said free. Now, let me ask you, who do you think won the contract? Well, Google did. So yeah, they won the contract because they can afford to put out a service for less. Problem with not protecting your technology and not having a way of protecting it is exactly that problem, that when a mega corporation comes in, they can afford to put out products for free, and they can wipe out the little people, and that's where patents come in. But of course, protecting the innovation is the most expensive part, and you're looking at the most expensive part, which is the patent attorney. So that's another problem that needs to be solved, is how do we make that patenting component efficient for the little people, the startups, universities, and small inventors. So now that you understand what a patent pool is, you also have to understand the way patent trolls operate, or non-practicing entities, if the word troll is a bad word. And basically, a patent troll is an entity that buys patents and sues companies. Okay, they don't develop a product, so they can't be sued for patent infringement. See, if you create a product that's covered by a patent, somebody can sue you on it. If you don't create any products, you can't get sued on patent infringement, because you're not making anything to be infringed. So basically, they buy patent portfolios, they develop the portfolios, and then they license them to the corporations by sending a very nice letter that goes something like this: Megacorp, you might be very interested in this patent portfolio that we've developed. Translated, if you don't license this patent portfolio, we're going to sue the living shit out of you. Okay? And the trolls have figured something out. They know if they go to the corporation with one patent, that, you can knock out a patent for $500,000 with proper legal maneuvering. So what the trolls figured out is they don't go to the corporations with one patent. they'd go to the corporations with 1,000 patents. And now it costs 1,000 times 500,000 to knock out 1,000 patents. And they ask for a percentage of that number. So let's say it costs $500 million to knock out this portfolio. They'll say, hey, we're going to give it to you for 50 million. You know, you're saving all that money. And that's why they're called trolls, because if you don't pay them, they sue you. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this is because the same strategy that trolls use to extort money from corporations is the exact same technique that startups, small inventors, and universities can use to license fees, in other words, to monetize their innovations. And I always say they can use these portfolios to get bought by a megacorp or to keep a megacorp away. It's the same exact thing. If you have a portfolio, it's much more simple for the corporation to go away than to try to attack you. It's like a shield. By the same token, it's cheaper for them to buy you than to attack you. So this strategy is something I've used with many startups, and actually, sadly, I should say, I've tried it with many startups, but few have succeeded, is probably the best way to put it. But the ones that have succeeded developed a portfolio and then had their exit strategy, which could be getting bought by a mega corporation. And by the way, when I help startups get bought by mega corporations, do you think I get to keep the patent work? No, I don't. It gets transferred to mega law firm, because mega corporations work with mega law firms. And once I develop the portfolio to the point where the startup gets bought, all the work goes away. But it's bittersweet, and that's my reward. In other words, I look at that as a win. When I lose all the patent work, that's a win for me, because that means that the startup had something, an exit that was good for them. And I could go into examples of startups that I've done this with, but perhaps another time. This slide just covers the difference between having a single patent and a portfolio of patents. You could have one patent with a very, very broad claim, which is going to cost a lot of money to get. In the same amount of time, you can develop a portfolio that covers the same area, but in a bunch of different patents. And actually, the patent portfolio is way more valuable for the same reason that I mentioned earlier. It's harder to defeat a portfolio than it is a single patent. And by the way, a single patent with broad claims brings in more prior art, because the claim is what determines the prior art, right? If you claim a frame, at least one wheel, and an engine that drives the wheel, what have I claimed? I've claimed cars, motorcycles, unicycles. So a claim can be very, very broad and capture a lot of prior art. But by the same token, you can break up that broad claim into a bunch of individual patents that cover different aspects of the invention, that now makes it more valuable, in my opinion, because now you have to, knock out the whole entire portfolio. So now we're going to get into, why OU812 was created. I've given some background. The American Invents Act was really the main reason. I was lecturing at the IEEE on the American Invents Act, on the pay-to-pay provisions, they call them. And when I started investigating, I realized that it was based on $800 million in lobbying by the richest multinational corporations on earth, 400 million on the left, 400 million on the right, to change the patent laws with no news coverage. Now, why was there no news coverage? Well, when you drop $800 million and you're covering the left and the right, by definition, you own all the news agencies. So there was no news coverage at all for the American Invents Act. And, I was giving this lecture, and I just about cried on stage, because I was like, the little people, the people I help, the small inventors, startups, and universities, I used to tell them they have a 1 in 1,000 chance. And that's if they can patent their stuff and develop a portfolio, etc. I said now it's 1 in 10,000, and they don't even know it. Very, very little press coverage. So now the advice that I'm supposed to give to you as an attorney is file early and file often. File early and often. Now, who does that help? Well, you're looking at who it helps. Filing early and often means you need a patent attorney to file early and often. And the reason you file early and often is because it's first to file. If Megacorp beats you to the patent office, you lose, even if you're in your garage working diligently for 5 years. So that's why you have to file early. You have to file often because you want to protect all the different variations. And that's why it's not favorable to the little people. It's favorable to corporations that can file early and they can file often because they're very well capitalized. So the reason we created OU812 is because basically the little people couldn't compete with the corporations. And as Finland is an example, the little people were just not filing patents, and they were being taken advantage by the corporations because the corporations had all the negotiating power. To give you an extreme example of Finland, they have something called polar bear pitching in Oulu, where the startups get inside of an ice hole and pitch their idea from an ice hole. They get unlimited time in the ice hole, by the way. You can stay in there as long as you can live, and there's a medic and a diver right there in case you die. And meanwhile, the VCs are sitting outside of the ice hole in their nice warm coats holding up scorecards. It's Shark Tank in an ice hole. And I went and got in the ice hole just because I said, the Finnish kids are doing what? And I volunteered to get in the ice hole, even though I'd never been in one. I said, if my startups are going to get in a fucking ice hole, I'm going to get in an ice hole. And I went and I trained and I got in that ice hole. And I basically told them how I ended up in an ice hole in Finland, first of all, which is another story. But at the end of that talk, I said, this was in 2015, I said, if you want me to teach you how to get the VCs in the ice hole, come talk to me. And I was talking about the OU812 concept, because I realized that one company filing 1,000 patents is the equivalent of 1,000 people filing one patent. Think about that. One company filing 1,000 patents, the value of that portfolio is equivalent to 1,000 individuals filing one patent, everything else being equal, same technology, same level of skill, etc. And that's where the light bulb went off. I said, if I could get people to come together and collaborate, right, and file these 1,000 patents, I can teach them how to file them. That's what I do, is I teach people how to write patent applications. We teach all the team members how to write patent applications. So now we can file lots and lots of patents, and now we can behave like a corporation. So the idea came up, this idea came after the American Invents Act. I was figuring out, how do I get around it? And I started thinking, well, why is it that they want these laws? Well, first to file, they've got lots of attorneys. They have also got secret labs where they can prototype stuff in secret before they even put it out to the public. They have infinite money, which means they can attack you before, during, and after. And they can also put out, products at a loss. Okay, so there was a lot of reasons, and I wanted to solve those problems, and I knew about the trolls, and I knew about patent pooling. And as I said, that's when the light bulb went off. 1,000 people filing one patent is the equivalent of one corporation filing 1,000 patents. So we created this because right now the little people cannot compete with the corporations, as I've mentioned before. So what we're doing is we're doing team-based open innovation ecosystem with intellectual property rights sharing and monetization. We're we're creating patent pools around technologies. We're creating open collaboration. And the other component of OU812 is we're protected open source. And what that means is we protect our innovation, then we open it for personal and educational use. And the hope is that the people that look at our patents see our model, and when they develop new things based on our patents, that they want to become part of our team. But there's no requirement that they do. In fact, OU812 is invite only, and we're looking for people that are team players. And we're actually not looking to scale. We're looking for a few good people in a few good areas to generate lots of portfolios and lots of products, startups, and services. So how does the engine work? Okay, So I told you that we 1,000 little people filing one patent is the equivalent of one corporation filing 1,000 patents. But there was a problem back in 2015, and when I first thought of it in 2010, it's called the herding of the cats problem. How do you get 1,000 individuals to act as a team? Well, the answer is you don't. That's the problem. Well, enter blockchain, enter distributed computing, enter GitHub, enter ways now of tracking contributions. And as soon as I saw blockchain, I said, this is it. This is, smart contracts, contracts that can adapt to situations are going to give us a way of tracking the contributions of the various inventors, the various team members in a way that's fair and open. So the backbone of the innovation engine is teamwork. We have teams. That's, I think, the most important part. Then we have teams that generate IPR assets, patents, trademarks, copyrights, trade secrets. And then we have tokens that get issued based on the value of those assets and that are tracked by the blockchain. Okay, so now we have a way of developing these assets, keeping track of who did what, and when these things get monetized, making sure that everybody gets paid fairly, the team. And we get paid by, selling portfolios, licensing portfolios, creating products, startups, and services, or better yet, since we're creating teams of highly specialized individuals in various areas of technologies, we can also do product development for corporations. So if a corporation has a problem, hey, I need you to solve this problem, they hand it over to us. Our team works on it. We wrap the intellectual property around it, and we sell it to them at maximum profit. In that situation, we're going to maximize the profit that we generate because we're selling it to a corporation. Now let's look at the other extreme, in which this is the best case scenario, I think, of OU812. There's an inventor in India that doesn't have a pot to piss in, okay? But he's the next Einstein. He has no access to the patent system. In that situation, OU812 would form a nonprofit. We would finance his computers, his patenting, his whole entire innovation we would finance, and he would get 100% of the profit. We would recover our costs. And that, to me, is the best case scenario, when we can actually help innovators from all over the world to protect their innovations when they normally couldn't, and they could feed their village. I believe this will solve many, many problems on Earth. I think it'll solve migration. If people can make money wherever they are, they don't need to migrate. If people can make money wherever they are, they can create startups, products, and services, which generates jobs. Corporations can only employ 10% of the population. What happens to the other 90%? So these are the problems that are being addressed with the Open Innovation Engine. So how does it work? So the little people, they work in an open collaborative environment, and they develop IPR assets. So the teams generate these assets, and they get these assets are assigned value. These values are based on, it's not humans assigning value. These are values that are assigned based on computer algorithms that look at various things like how long the patent has been pending, how many people are citing to it, various other indicators of value of the IPR asset. So these assets are assigned value, and they're captured in basically smart contracts. Okay, so these values are captured, the people that created the assets are captured, and the value of the tokens are captured using these smart contracts. So now these contracts can track the terms, the assets, the changes in value, the tokens that are generated, and also the monetization when it's time for distribution. Because remember, the end goal is to do something, right? To create products, startups, and services, or to have events where the innovator gets to sell their portfolio or license their portfolio to a corporation. So these monetization events are what is going to be captured in these smart contracts in an open and distributed way. Why is it open and distributed? Because we want everybody at OU812 to know exactly what's going on, because that creates community and that creates fairness, and it also lets us look at bad actors. For example, if an innovator comes in and says, look, I want to keep, you know, the way the engine works, 10% of whatever gets monetized goes back to the engine. But let's say the innovator says, okay, I want to keep my 90%, and Mr. Patent Attorney, I'm not going to give you anything, but it'll be really good experience for you. Well, AKA the intern model, which I call the ultimate capitalistic model, get people to do stuff for free, AKA slave labor. So in that situation, I'm not going to join. I'm like, I have plenty of experience. I don't need to file your patent to get one more patent filed. So, the projects that are going to succeed are going to succeed. And I know this sounds stupid, but in an open system, when you create a project and you give away the right incentives, the right people will join the right project, and that project will succeed because it attracted the right people. So now we're getting into more of the details of the engine. This is, the beauty of the engine is this is all patented. This is patent pending. And once we patent it, we open it, which means as soon as we file our patents, we can talk about it, which is typically not the case with other clients and other services. They try to keep everything secret forever. But we're protected open source, so we patent, then we open. So this is our open architecture for the Open Innovation Engine. And again, it's free for personal and educational use. If a corporation, takes it, then of course we have patent protection, and that's why we filed for the patents. So the way the engine works is you have the engine and you have a bunch of portfolios. And each portfolio you can think of as like a neuron within a brain, okay? And neurons don't fire all at the same time, okay? And in fact, I think if all your neurons fired at once, you might perhaps go crazy. I don't know. But anyways, this is like a brain, and each little neuron is a patent portfolio or a tech team. And the firing of a neuron is when a monetization event occurs. Products, startup services, licensing, those sort of events. Money's coming in. And as long as the neurons are firing, the brain stays alive. And as long as we're smart about the patents that we develop, the brain is healthy. So we're looking to develop portfolios in key areas, to develop products, startups, and services, and create monetization events that keeps the brain alive. Now, since everything is tied to a token, when you're part of the group, you might be in this portfolio over here that's not going to monetize for 10 years. However, this portfolio monetized yesterday. You get the benefit because there's a common token. All the value is common to everybody. So even though your portfolio didn't monetize yet, the fact that other portfolios are monetizing is helping everybody that's part of the network. And 10% is going to the engine, which is going to fund future products. So in other words, the engine wants to become an accelerator. We want to get to the point where we can say we're going to build a rocket to Mars. We're going to build a condo on Mars. And we'll have the money to execute that and the portfolios to protect it. So now we're getting even more technical, and this is where Olga comes in if there's any super technical questions. This is the engine is more than this simple concept up here. It's actually hardware, there's actually hardware components to it. And this component here that we're going to talk about a little later is the Mumu router, okay? The Mumu router is covered by one of the OU812 patents in the, I guess that's the machine learning space. So this router is a smart router. It's anti-hack and antivirus. So it actually detects viruses and hacks without using signatures. Most virus checkers require 10 million computers to get infected before your computer gets fixed, and hopefully your computer wasn't one of the 10 million. So, the way this router works, it actually prevents hacks and viruses by looking at sort of the way things are acting, not so much, signatures. And in this way, it's able to stop, hacks and viruses. And it also tracks hacks and viruses. So it'll, and by the way, Olga, if I say something that's incorrect, feel free to correct me. Uh, but anyways, it's an anti-hack, antivirus router, but that's not all. So the way the system works is you have the conventional sort of internet path, right, through a router into the internet. And of course, we have our routers, these little circles right here are these little smart routers, right? Because for blockchain, you need to do voting, and the voting is based on these distributed nodes, these routers that are distributed. So this is our Mumu router, and these are our Mumu routers. But these Mumu routers can actually connect through a software-defined radio and some analog load balancing circuitry to a low-frequency magnetic transmission antenna that gives us an air interface, which is much faster than this conventional internet interface. Because we have dual redundancy, dual channel redundancy, it means that we can prevent further hacking attempts or data corruption. And that's because we'll be receiving the data over the air link before it gets received over the wired link, which means now we can do data checking, correction, error correction, anti-hack, anti-spam, all sorts of really cool things, not to mention that we will have our own internet. If this connection goes down, we will be able to communicate as long as we have these routers and these antennas all over the world. Now, I was told by some of the people on the space team last time that 3 routers will cover the Earth. Well, every single OU812 team member is going to have a router. So we'll easily cover the Earth, and we're going to have basically our own communication, private communications channel. And let me go back to this. Why do we need these secure routers? Well, because we're distributing tokens and we're tracking assets. You need security. To actually launch a token costs about $100 million or so on the higher end. And part of that are security audits. There's many hoops. You have to go through the SEC, the various government licensing commissions. So it's very, very expensive. And I don't know if somebody's asking a question, but I can't check it right now. I see my Discord going off. So if you want to ask a question, you have to do it on voice. So anyways, the dual communication gives us a way of doing this error checking, and also gives a way of communication. If the internet were to go down, we could still continue to operate. And so that covers sort of the high level architecture of the system. The software defined radio, by the way, I built the first working software-defined radio. I think I can claim that. Hughes Aircraft had the patent on the software-defined radio, but they didn't know how to build it. And I actually built the first one when I was working at Hughes Aircraft. I didn't even know I was building a software-defined radio because I was just taking some circuits and putting them together. Later on, I realized that what I did should have been patented, but I didn't know how to think like an inventor back then. I was thinking like an engineer. Engineers think like this. Oh, I'm just putting stuff together, and I'm an engineer, and I just put stuff together. Well, if that stuff that you're putting together is novel and solves a problem in a way that nobody else has done it, guess what? You invented something. And I solved the problem. They couldn't build these software-defined radios, and I said, yeah, well, if you put these, DSPs and fully interconnect them and add some FPGAs, you could solve the problem. And it solved the problem. But I didn't realize that I was being an inventor, and that's what I try to teach people, is how to act like inventors, not like engineers. So let's talk about some case studies for the Open Innovation Engine. Okay, right now the engine has, I think, around 50 or so patents in the portfolio. Most of the patents are in the sustainability group, which are basically my patents related to these greenhouses. These are aquaponic greenhouses that can grow organic fish plants and mushrooms in extreme environments. And I actually have one in my backyard, so I actually built this in my backyard. And as I was building it, I was going, wow, this is kind of cool. It's doing some cool stuff. Maybe I should patent it. And I did. We just got granted our 7th patent on this particular design. And the way it works is there's a section, I kind of like to think of it as yin and yang. There's the dark side and the light side. The dark side is everything that produces CO2. Fish, mushrooms, and later on you'll see humans. The light side is everything that produces O2, plants, you know, green things. Okay, they're on the light side because they get the sun. So the plants produce oxygen that gets heated and rises and gets captured by this evaporative cooling system that now takes that oxygen and cools it and adds moisture and now feeds it into the mushroom section, which wants cold, moist air. So now you can get a temperature difference between the hot side and the cold side. Here in Virginia with 80% humidity, I was getting a 20-degree Fahrenheit temperature difference between the hot side and the cold side of the greenhouse. What that means is in a desert or in a extreme environment, I can get a lot more than that, and cools it and adds moisture and now feeds it into the mushroom section, which wants cold, moist air. So now you can get a temperature difference between the hot side and the cold side. Here in Virginia with 80% humidity, I was getting a 20-degree Fahrenheit temperature difference between the hot side and the cold side of the greenhouse. What that means is in a desert or in a extreme environment, I can get a lot more than that. So it does oxygen exchange, and it turned out to be novel, and these patents have been getting granted. And this particular one I filed worldwide. Right now it's pending in pretty much every country that has a desert or a tundra. and the idea is to build these, to feed people all over the world is the point. But why am I talking about this? Well, it's part of a portfolio that has value. And to give you an example, when I first filed for these patents, the value was 0. Why is the value 0? Well, the value is 0 because unless somebody wants it, it has no value, right? In other words, you could have a Lamborghini, but if nobody wants to buy it, it might have value to you, but it has no value to the rest of the world until somebody buys it. So until somebody wants something, there is no value. And so, most applications start at 0 value, even though you spent $30,000 to get that application. It has 0 value in the market. But now let's say people start using it. They start citing to your application. When they cite to your application, that's evidence of use, right? If somebody is citing to a car with 4 wheels, they're working on cars, which means that they're potential licensees. See, they're people that are going to be building cars, so they're potential people that you could get money from for your invention. So the fact that, these patents start getting cited, it increases the value. And the oldest patent in this group is from 2015. It's a US only patent. And yesterday I checked the value. It's at $320,000. So it went from 0 to 320,000 in about 5 years. And it's 10 times what I spent doing it. Actually more, I spent my own time, and you have to count your own time. So let's say that a typical patent costs $30,000 to get USD, which is not unusual. It went up 100 times. Wait, 10 times. Yeah, 300,000. So it went up 10 times in value. And that was just in 5 years. Now let's say I wait another 10 years. It could go up into the millions, because as more people use it, the value increases because there's more people that are going to need to buy your patent or get out of that business. So, so the reason I'm talking about it is I developed this portfolio, but the way the engine works is I'm not an architect, okay? But 2 very talented ladies on our team happen to be architects. And I went to them and I said, can you take my greenhouse and design buildings and skyscrapers based on it? And I told them my vision. There's this atrium, you walk in, it's, this is a building now. This is 1,000 feet high. I told them my vision, and they came back with designs that blew me away because I'm not an architect. They thought of things that I couldn't contemplate. Well, first of all, I'm an electrical engineer. I'm not even, a mechanical guy. So they came up with incredible building designs that feed the inhabitants organic fish, plants, and mushrooms. And they added, other features that I had never thought about. For example, you know, in this design, the east and the west, and the only thing that gets sun is the south, depending if you're on the northern latitude, you know, other if you're on the other end of the world. But anyways, everything else is dark, right? Well, humans don't want to live in dark rooms typically. So they added louvers, right, that let in the light on the east, on the east and the west sides. They added some windows on the side to now let in some more light from the east and the west into the atrium. This is the plant chamber, right? They added some utility, boxes, which I never thought, I'm like, why do you need a utility box? Well, all buildings need utility boxes because there's shit in the buildings that needs to be utilized, if that's a word. But this design actually uses the same concept of the greenhouse. It has a light side and a dark side, and O2 gets transferred through this natural evaporative system into the dark side and flushes all the CO2 into the light side and creates a natural atmosphere within the building. And it provides food security because this building can grow organic fish, plants, and mushrooms. So this is a building you can put in the desert or in the tundra that will grow the inhabitants' organic fish, plants, and mushrooms off-grid by using solar and wind power, etc. So now, I'm trying to explain how the innovation engine works, right? In other words, I'm not an architect, but they were. So they developed these designs, and now they're co-inventors on these designs. And in the OU812 model, ownership is based on inventorship. Okay, so if you go back to the greenhouse, I developed this all on my own. Okay, so 10% goes to the engine, 90% goes to me because I've done everything on it. Okay, in this situation, 10% goes to the engine, and since there's 3 co-inventors, it's a 3-way split. So the inventorship solves the problem of ownership at the inventorship level, because we're going to base ownership based on inventorship, which makes sense. If you're an inventor on a patent, you're a co-owner on it, and you get an equal split when that invention gets monetized. And I'm out of beer. So now we talked about how the collaboration works, right? That, I'm not an architect. We had architects. Now we've got patents covering buildings. And by the way, these buildings will probably be way more valuable than the greenhouses. Because greenhouses are one thing, with buildings, especially with COVID now, and the problems they're having in the Middle East, these buildings are going to be, I'm thinking 1,000 times more valuable than the portfolio on the greenhouses. And of course, that's going to be a 3-way split. With the innovators, 10% goes to the engine. And by the way, the other thing of the open collaboration, Maria, the architect that did this, she created this incredible presentation called Dream Habitat that we created into a movie, that displays all this technology that she's using to go out and try to look at markets like North Africa and other regions to market this technology, because we want to build these all over the world. The end goal of OU812, by the way, is not selling patents. The only reason I'm selling my patents is to fund the engine. Okay, that's the only reason. I want to build these everywhere, but I want to sacrifice them to fund the engine. However, these buildings we'd really like to deploy in Dubai and all over the Middle East, and also in extreme cold environments. And also I'm talking to some people with respect to military applications for this technology, because right now the soldiers are eating MREs in the middle of the desert. How nice would it be for them to eat organic fish, plants, and mushrooms in the middle of the desert? So we're going to be looking at people that can help us get into the military markets with this technology. So now, we mentioned that we develop portfolios, and the question is, how do we do that in a smart way, right? So first of all, OU812 is kind of like a special forces team. Not everybody gets in. We're looking for team players, people that are smart, people that have common sense, and people that believe in what we're trying to do. And we don't need a lot of them, and that's the beauty of it. Right now with a team of like myself, Olger, and Josh, and one other person, we've generated 50 patents. Okay, so just 4 people generated 50 patents, and that's the tip of the iceberg. If we had funding, each one of those could become 1,000. So 4 people could generate 5,000 patents, and 5,000 times 300,000. Do the math. The money is there. But the question is, how do we develop these portfolios in a logical way that's going to be beneficial to the team? Because we're here to monetize and to help innovators. So what we're doing is we're using a very smart tool that is able to do searching to figure out the landscape. And if you look at this tool, we did a search on aquaponic greenhouse, and it came up with all the patents that have to do with aquaponic greenhouses. Well, why did I do that? Well, I built an aquaponic greenhouse, so I was interested in that market. So now I have a list of potential licensees here, all the people that have patents related to aquaponic greenhouses. So if I'm going to sell my portfolio, who am I going to contact? Well, you guessed it, I'm going to contact all of these people and say, hey, do you want to buy this portfolio? Now, that's great, right? Because I've already developed the portfolio and I've got the patents. But what if you're trying to develop patents? You don't know what's out there. Well, it also generates this patent landscape. And with this patent landscape, you can actually look at areas that don't have any patents. So for example, these 2 little grids right here have 0 patents in them. What does that mean? Well, it means that that area is ripe for innovation. Because when you start filing patents in very crowded areas, it's very difficult to get patents, right? The more prior art there is, the harder it is to get a patent. So you don't want to be filing patents in mountains. You want to be filing patents in valleys. And well, this is the intersection of aquaponics environment, high yield plant, aquaponic insulated greenhouses, and this is predictive daylight harvesting. So this is the combination of greenhouses and tech, like sensors, for example. It means that there's nothing between those 2 technologies. Same as these 2. I didn't highlight them all, but this is ripe for innovation because I should redo this slide. There's actually blue squares here and blue squares there. So when you look at these blue squares, it's the intersection between the various technologies, right? So no patents. Nobody has patented in that area. And we're looking to patent in areas that make money, right? So for example, let's look at greenhouses and sensors, right? The intersection of sensors and greenhouses is important, and I know it's important because there's a lot of people looking at that right now. So that's an area we're very interested in. AI for greenhouses, IoT for greenhouses, spectrum analyzers, all that stuff will marry greenhouses, the mechanical and the electrical. So this is an area we're going to fully develop through our electronics team. People that know sensors, spectrum analyzers, which is me actually. I mean, this is my area. But the way it works is kind of simple. You keep everything secret until you talk to me. And why is that? Well, because I'm a patent attorney and everybody else isn't. And if you put it on public forums, if you put it on YouTubes, on Discords, you're giving it away. So the first step is for you to get with me and say, hey, I have something that might be worthwhile doing, okay? And we have a meeting and we do some searching, right? And we look at these sort of things. And, I'm an engineer. I can look at your stuff and say, I don't know. I mean, in other words, we come to a smart decision, right? And now once we've come to that decision, you could say, hey, Carlos, I think this is protectable and I agree with you. In that situation, we will file for a patent application, you and I, okay? And now it has to be accepted into the group, right? So not only do I have to convince everybody that you're a good guy, but after we after we file your provisional case, which is the cheapest way to get a patent, after you learn how to write patent applications, by the way, Every team member has to know how to write patent applications because I don't want to spend time teaching people how to do, which takes my time, right? We're trying to be efficient. So once you learn how to write patent applications, we kick the buckets and we say, yes, this is a good idea. Go generate drawings. You generate drawings. I go, the drawings are perfect. Go describe the drawings. You describe the drawings. Hey, they look great. Go, let's work on some claims. We write some claims. Hey, the claims, the drawings, and description look great. Let's file the patent. We file the patent, and now we want to get it admitted into the OU812 group. Now that it's protected, we can talk about it, right? So now we can go to the other team members and say, guess what? This inventor invented a drone killer application, an application that could knock drones out of the sky. True story, by the way. And why am I talking about it right now? Well, because Olger invented the drone killer that can knock drones out of the sky, and he's got a working prototype that's for sale. He's got drone killers that are for sale right now. Why are drone killers important? Well, rich people don't want people spying on them. Okay? So this app will basically knock out every drone within your area. It'll just make it land. And uh, so before why am I talking about this? Well, we're protected open source, okay? And Olger is 100% inventor on that invention. I contributed nothing. I was just the patent attorney. So in that situation, he's going to give me some percentage for helping him out, some fair percentage, whatever fair is, whatever he thinks is fair. Hopefully it's not zero. And then, 10% is going to go to the engine. And that's how we work. That's how we innovate. So you could come up with something like, for example, greenhouses and sensors, right? I've got an idea in my original patent application for using these gas spectrometers. They're gas and solid spectrometers made by a Finnish company. I forget the name of it right now, but they make these little tiny boxes that are basically spectrum analyzers. You can hold it up to your shirt and it'll say, oh, 10% rayon and 50%, it analyzes the composition based on the spectral analysis. I saw that and I said, oh my God, you put one of those in a greenhouse. Now you have gas and liquids, right? And since you're only taking measurements at little time periods, you can sample CO2, O2, you can have a probe going into the water and capture nitrates. pH is a tricky one, but pH can be done just with a simple color tab, a color. The spectrometer could read a color on something that changes color based on pH. So anyways, these problems are solvable, but right now they're just an idea, right? Somebody that knows how to use this device, for example, like myself, could actually start experimenting and actually now come up with apps and things that actually implement this thing that now you can sell to people that are developing green. Anyways, we're going to be smart about what we protect, okay? And now this is a simple project. This is sort of a project overview to help you understand how it works. Everything is based on a project basis, okay? So a project starts like Aaron said, hey, he has an idea. We think it's a good idea. And right now he says, okay, Carlos, for helping me out on this, I'm going to give you 3%. And the engine's going to get 10%, which means Aaron is left with 87%, okay? We get the patent admitted into the engine, so now the patent is protected and opened. It's open for personal educational use for other people to look at and to further develop other patents on. But at the same time, we're going to generate a valuation on that patent. Like I said, at first it's going to be worth zero, but eventually it's going to start going up in value, okay? And if we think this is something that's going to have a lot of value, like my greenhouses, I started developing that portfolio because I saw there was value there. I saw that I was innovating in areas that people weren't. So I started developing the portfolio. So, right now that's the ownership, 87, 3, and 10. So now let's say we as a team decide that this is something that is really worth developing, right? So now in order to develop the portfolio, that takes more attorney time. Like for me to help launch a portfolio, it takes my time. And as everybody knows, time is money. And in this situation, perhaps he says, Carlos, if I up you to 10%, will you help me with this portfolio? and he goes, the engine gets 10%, and he goes, and if, and I need a VC to finance the hard money that's needed, we're going to give the VC 10%. And a new contract gets generated. So the first contract covered this ownership model, this valuation. Now tokens are issued based on that initial valuation, right? And now the project moves into the second phase where we're developing the portfolio. Now the portfolio gets developed, and because we're adding more patents, which each have value that's being tracked, now the value of the portfolio is increasing, and that is being captured in a second smart contract. So now let's say Aaron says, hey, I've got Megacorp that's interested in buying this patent portfolio. Well, in OU812, the innovators call the shots. I would say, Aaron, what do you want to do? You want to sell it? Okay, let's sell it. In that situation, we might bring in a licensing person, but let's say the VC can handle that aspect of it. So now Megacorp licenses the portfolio, and now this portfolio that was worth X is now worth typically 100X. Well, typically 10X, but in our system it's 100X. And the reason it's 100X is because we're developing portfolios at 1/10 of the cost. That's because all of our innovators know how to write patent applications, right? So now we're developing portfolios at 1/10 of the cost. Portfolios usually go up by a factor of 10, which means our portfolio value increase can be a factor of 100. So, if this was worth 5,000, this is going to be 100 times 5,000, 500,000. So now the monetization event occurs, and now all the funds get distributed based on that ownership. 10% goes to the engine, 10% goes to the VC, 10% goes to the patent attorney, and 70% goes to the inventor in the form of tokens, okay, right? However, these tokens can be cashed out. So the VC might say, hey, I want to cash out my tokens, give me my, we buy them back. We buy the tokens back, and now we own that percentage. The engine does. Same thing with the innovator. He says, hey, I want to cash out. Fine. Here's your 70%. Now we own that portfolio. The patent attorney cashes out. Great. Now the engine owns the portfolio. At the end of the day, the engine is getting its 10%. So, in a cash out event, it really doesn't matter to us, because as long as we keep developing more portfolios and as long as we keep building this 10%, we really don't care. So in this situation, all the tokens could have gotten cashed out, but we can start another project, with more patents and issue more tokens. So it gives us, because remember, it's like a neural network, right? There's not just one portfolio. There's a bunch of them all happening in different points in time. And frankly, that was a question that was asked by somebody. And I said the probability of everybody cashing out at once is basically 0. And that's because the portfolios have different values at different times. And you don't want to cash out when your patent is worth 0. You want to cash out when it's worth something. And that means that there'll always be, the neurons firing. So, are you a team player? We're basically looking for people that are team players, that understand what we're doing. It's a pretty simple concept. I mean, we're developing assets and we're selling them or licensing them or creating product startups and services, and we're tracking it on the blockchain. So conceptually, it's not difficult to understand. The terms are simple. 10% protected open source. The innovators give away percentages to attract team members. Now, by the way, this model is not just for patents, okay? Let's say we wanted to bring a very talented DJ named Jonas from Finland to the Washington, D.C. area to do some gigs, okay? Once OU812 is funded, we could propose it to the team and say, hey, I know a guy that knows all the bars in D.C. Well, that happens to be me. So why don't I talk to all the promoters in the DC area and see if they'd be interested in bringing a Finnish DJ. Of course, we'll send some videos of Jonas, so they can see what they're getting. And they're like, yeah, we want them. Okay. We create a project and we fund it. We fly Jonas out here to do his DJing. We get huge crowds. huge amounts of money gets made, everything gets captured in a contract, and when the money gets paid out, everything gets distributed. And now Jonas flies back to Finland, and we have happy people here in the United States and in Finland. So anyways, that's pretty much it. So we've covered everything that I wanted to cover, and I thank you for attending.